Support Narativ's independent journalism at patreon.com/narrative and check out our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe and download. Well, here we are. We survived. Welcome to Narrative Live, a very special edition as we look at the coronavirus. You can tell I still have some virus of my own from my little visit to the hospital last week. Still recovering, but doing much better. You're just getting to hear a lot of the effects of that throughout my attempts to do tonight's show, which is why we're doing it a little bit stealth. But we're going to tell you a lot about coronavirus, everything I've been able to research in the last couple of days, and really look at why this could be Donald Trump's Katrina. But in a day like today, it's just impossible to not stop and take a look at all the headlines. There were so many headlines that on any given day would be the biggest story of the day. Take a look at everything that broke just today around COVID. So New York's mayor, Bill de Blasio, announced a state of emergency in the city of New York City. There'll be a ban on any gatherings of over 500 people. That includes Broadway musicals, which have now gone dark. We heard today that March Madness is also being cancelled. It was the worst stock market day since 1987. Disney's theme parks announced that they'll be closing down for an indefinite period of time. And Amazon has announced that they will ask their staff to work from home if they can. At the same time, 150 million Americans will now get COVID virus. That's the estimate. That's the unbelievable estimate that's going to be predicted now. 150 million Americans will get the coronavirus. It's an extraordinary number, almost half the population, that will, over the next couple of years, be exposed to this disease. So, the good news is we're not at the beginning anymore. We're starting to get rolling. The bad news is we're still about 14 weeks from peak virus and still quite far away from those 150 million people all being exposed to COVID. There was also news today from Tom Hanks's son, who went online to tell us how his parents are doing after they were diagnosed with coronavirus in Australia.
What's up, everyone? Yeah, it's true. My parents got coronavirus. Crazy. They're both down in Australia right now because my dad was shooting a movie down there. But I just got off the phone with them. They both are fine. They're not even that sick. They're not worried about it. They're not tripping, but they're going through the necessary health precautions, obviously. But I don't think it's anything to be too worried about. I appreciate everyone's concern and the well wishes, but I think it's all going to be all right. But I appreciate it, and just everybody stay safe out there. Much love.
Interesting choice of tattoos to be talking about your parents' health. But there you go. I guess he doesn't have a choice in that. Let's move on to my big theme of tonight, which is Trump's Katrina. A few weeks ago, I was brazenly online on Twitter, and I said that coronavirus was becoming very much Trump's Katrina. And if you've lived through that event, if you lived through it as a survivor of it, then you certainly recall it. You'll never forget it. If you covered it or watch it as I did as a TV journalist, or even if you were at home just watching it, those images are going to have been seared in your brain for your whole lives. People trapped on roofs, the floodwaters rising, not being able to get help from the federal government for days and days and days. Katrina was a storm that should never have been, but it was, and it caused great damage to George Bush's career and certainly his reputation. We're going to take a little look back at what Katrina looked like and we're going to do that because there are lessons in Katrina that we can learn for coronavirus. Take a look at this.
We are gonna die out here if they do not see somebody out here right now.
The horror show at the Superdome. Close to 25,000 people were trapped there for days in the heat and stink.
We need to feed our babies. We need to give our babies some water.
Somebody rescue our children.
Thousands more baked on overpasses along the interstate.
This man jumped to his death because he just couldn't take it no more.
More than 1,800 people died across the Gulf Coast. How could this be happening in the United States of America? Who seemed more out of touch, President Bush or FEMA Director Mike Brown.
And Brownie, you're doing a heck of a job.
New Orleans Mayor Ray Nagin let loose on a radio broadcast.
Now get off your asses and let's do something, and let's fix the biggest damn crisis in the history of this country.
Now, when I wrote that this was Trump's Katrina, it wasn't an assessment of what's to come. It was an assessment of what's already been done, which is very little. In fact, there's been so much damage done just by the lack of testing available to people for coronavirus. That's one of the most important things we can do in battling this virus. It's not even happening. That leaves us with only 2 other defenses, but we'll get to that in a second. Katrina was a crisis of leadership, a total lack of preparedness by the federal government for an event that was crippling parts of the country, that left people in fear and in grief. And while they were in that state, there was backslapping going on by the President of the United States. It was a blindness to what needed to be done and an unawareness of how bad the situation was going to be. That is exactly where coronavirus is today for Donald Trump. That doesn't mean he can't turn the corner. There's plenty of time to still show us his leadership chops here. But you can also be pretty sure that Katrina, it wasn't as bad as coronavirus is going to be. Last night, Trump introduced travel bans from Europe. They're indicative of what Trump always views things as: foreign invaders, bad guys coming to get you. You know, the